From our free daily newsletter, the latest from podnews.net with Riverside. In Variety today, we learn that video podcasts aren't eligible to win an Emmy. Podcasts aren't eligible if it's a straight video recording of the audio podcast, according to a spokesperson. The Golden Globes have a new podcast award, however. Spotify has released data on Gen Z's use of podcasts on the platform. There's an increase of listening to podcast streams in school day mornings from students, and they switch to podcast categories like science and business technology. Podcast hosting company Castos has added a new embedded player, including OEmbed support. In Germany, podcast listeners spend 2 hours with podcasts a week, according to new data from Bitkom. 44% listen while in the car. The data is based on a survey of 595 podcast listeners. Adam Curry has published how to start a hyper-local podcast. You don't need to be Joe Rogan to make a difference to your community, he adds. We've got a podcast app testing podcasts, which is called PodClock, and it's back. Handy for telling the time, handier for testing podcast apps. And the Alliance for Women in Media has announced a free masterclass with Emily Rasek, who's Senior Vice President of Strategy and Operations for the podcast division at Sony Music Entertainment. She will be sharing how today's top podcasters cut through the noise to get discovered, build loyal communities, and turn casual listeners into devoted fans. The event is available publicly from today until mid-September. And in podcast news, when an explosion rocked a seemingly routine flight between Singapore and Sydney on November the 4th, 2020, the captain of QF-32, Richard de Cripney, leapt into action. Decades of knowledge and experience helped him make critical decisions under pressure to safely land the plane, the crippled Airbus A380, saving more than 400 passengers and crew. And now Richard is sharing his lessons in resilience, leadership, crisis management and more in Fly with Richard de Cripney. And American Nightmares returns for a new season from Gamut Podcast Network. The season revisits the story that originally catapulted the show to number 2 on Apple Podcasts and adds fresh interviews and exclusive updates. And this podcast is sponsored by Riverside's Co-Creator. Meet Co-Creator by Riverside. It'll let you turn one recording into clips, captions, show notes and posts instantly. AI that understands your content and markets it for you. Create once, publish everywhere. Try Riverside today. There's a link in the show notes, and that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe for free, we're at podnews.net.